There's a reason this one scene in Reminders of Him hits harder than almost anything Colleen Hoover has ever written. And it's not because of what happens, it's because of what doesn't. Kenna, the kind of name that sounds strong when you say it, but breaks a little in the middle when you hold it too long. She's not introduced like a hero. She's introduced like a ghost, trying to remember how to live. The first 10 minutes move like an apology. Every shot lingers too long. Every silence feels earned. You can almost feel the air being heavy around her, the camera refusing to let her breathe. The lighting isn't sad, it's judgmental. That's the first trick the movie plays. It doesn't beg you to feel sorry for her. It dares you to decide if she deserves it. And then there's the town, small enough to keep secrets, but not small enough to forget them. Everyone looks at her like they already know the story, and that's exactly what they do. She killed someone. Or at least, that's what the whispers say. That's the power of this story. It doesn't start with a mystery, it starts with a sentence. When Colleen Hoover wrote Reminders of Him, she didn't just write about a grief. She wrote about guilt that ages with you. And somehow the film captures that without saying a word. It's not a faithful adaptation in the sense of plot, but in the sense of emotion. It remembers the ache. The opening feels like a punishment disguised as a homecoming. Kenna's return isn't triumphant, it's transactional. She's there to beg for something the world has already decided she doesn't deserve, a second chance. The movie keeps that quiet, but you can feel it in the way people don't meet her eyes. It's brutal in the smallest ways, and that's where the brilliance hides. If you read the book, you know that Colleen Hoover doesn't waste emotion. Every sentence feels like it's bleeding. The film translates that with pacing, slow, deliberate, uncomfortably human. Director Sharon Caswell doesn't try to Hollywoodize it. She lets it breathe, and that breath hurts. There's one specific moment early on that tells you everything about how the movie will treat redemption. Kenna walks past a store window and sees her reflection next to a missing poster, old, faded, forgotten by the world, but not by her. It's the most subtle bit of symbolism in the entire movie, and they don't even zoom in. It just sits there, waiting for you to notice. The color grading is all soft browns and gray blues, like grief left out in the sun too long. It's not trying to be pretty, it's trying to be familiar. That's what separates Reminders of Him from a typical tearjerker. It doesn't glamorize pain, it just lets you sit in it. Some adaptations feel like cover songs, recognizable but hollow. This one feels like the same melody played on a different instrument. Colleen Hoover's novel whispered, the film murmurs. Same feeling, different sound. And that's the secret I promised earlier, the reason this movie hits harder than you expect. It's not because of what Kenna does, or even what happens to her. It's because the film never lets her escape her own memory. The story isn't about forgiveness at all. It's about remembering what forgiveness costs. When the credits roll on Reminders of Him, most people will walk out thinking it's a redemption film. But if you really pay attention, it's not redemption at all. It's exposure. The film doesn't wash Kenna clean, it strips her bare. The tragedy isn't that she made a mistake, it's that she has to live in a world that remembers it. That's the part no trailer can sell. The guilt doesn't go away once she apologizes. It lingers like fog, heavy and quiet, wrapping itself around every new moment she tries to create. You see it in Micah Monroe's eyes, that empty, distant look that says she's still halfway inside the past. The camera doesn't push in for drama. It stays back, almost afraid to intrude. That distance becomes its own kind of honesty. Caswell shoots grief like it's a roommate that never moves out. Every frame feels too still, too neat, as if the world has moved on, but Kenna hasn't. It's one of those performances where silence does all the talking. And when Ledger steps in, played by Tyreek Withers, you feel how awkward Hope can be. He's not the charming savior type. He's just a guy who doesn't know what to do with his empathy. The screenplay keeps some of Hoover's letter fragments, but it retools them as voiceover scattered through the story. Instead of full letters, we get flashes, half sentences that bleed into the visuals. It's a smart trick. It keeps the ghost of Scotty alive without trapping the movie in narration, but it also changes how we experience Kenna's guilt. In the book, those letters are full confessions. On screen, they become echoes. She's no longer explaining herself. She's haunted by her own words. That shift is small, but devastating. It turns confession into consequence. And that's where the adaptation earns its first real victory. It understands that guilt isn't an event. It's a weather pattern. It comes and goes, then circles back when you least expect it. The movie captures that rhythm with soft fades and time jumps that feel deliberately disorienting. We don't always know how many days have passed, and that's the point. Healing doesn't follow a calendar. Of course, this is still a studio film, so there are compromises. The cinematography is beautiful, almost too beautiful. Pain this raw shouldn't look like a perfume ad, but the lighting sometimes leans that way. It's like the filmmakers didn't fully trust the darkness. They kept sneaking in a little glow, as if to reassure the audience that everything would be fine. It's forgivable, but you can feel the studio notes whispering through the frame. Make it softer, make it prettier. And to the film's credit, they didn't cut it. They let it breathe. And that breathing space is where Reminders of Him finally earns its name. It's not about him, the man who's gone. It's about the reminders we carry, the tiny echoes that shape who we become after the world stops forgiving us. People always say books are better than movies, but that's not entirely fair. A book whispers to your imagination. A movie speaks in light. They're different dialects of the same language, emotion. What Caswell and her team do well is translate Hoover's emotional vocabulary into cinematic grammar. In the book, guilt is described through thoughts and letters. On screen, guilt becomes architecture. The walls of Kenna's apartment feel too white, too empty. The world around her has space, but she doesn't fit in it. When she walks through town, extras glance just a bit too long, the camera catching those micro-expressions that remind us she's still marked. That's clever storytelling. No exposition, just silent judgment hanging in the air. The music helps too. Instead of a sweeping romantic score, the composer uses quiet, ambient tones. Not sad, just unfinished, like a song that refuses to resolve. Every time you expect a melody to rise, it stops, suspended in midair. It's the sonic equivalent of forgiveness that never arrives. And then there's Ledger. The film gives him slightly more backbone than the novel did, mostly because movies need active characters. But even with that tweak, he remains the film's moral anchor. He's not perfect. In fact, he's almost frustratingly hesitant. But that hesitation is the point. He's the audience surrogate, the person caught between compassion and caution. When he finally decides to see Kenna as a human being again, it doesn't feel scripted, it feels inevitable. Still, there's something you lose when you move from page to screen. The novel's internal monologues gave us unfiltered access to Kenna's guilt. The movie has to show it physically, and sometimes that translation stumbles. You can film a tear, but you can't film regret. Regret lives in syntax, in the pauses between words. No camera can catch that perfectly. So the filmmakers cheat a little. They build visual metaphors. There's a recurring shot of Kenna writing, then tearing pages out, leaving scraps on the table. Each time the camera focuses on her hands. It's heavy-handed, sure, but it works. The fragments become a motif for a life that keeps starting over and never finishing the sentence.